New at 10, Wisconsin Republicans are planning to introduce a bill to crack down on people living in the state illegally. Our State Capitol Bureau Chief Vanessa Kelson has more about what this bill could mean for our county sheriffs.
It keeps our communities safe.
The bill, expected to be introduced later this week, would require county sheriffs to verify if someone they've arrested for a felony is a U.S. citizen. And if they're not citizens, the sheriffs would have to report them to the Federal Department of Homeland Security.
We need to inform the federal government that they are here, and the Trump administration will send them back to the countries in which they came from.
But what happens if sheriffs don't comply? This bill outlines the county would lose 15% of its shared revenue from the state.
We do have, unfortunately, some counties in the state, Milwaukee and Dane County, that are not doing that. And as we all know, crime is like cancer. It spreads into area communities.
Shared revenue is state aid. For example, here in Dane County, the county received over $9 million in shared aid last year, according to the Wisconsin Department of Revenue. So if they were to lose 15% of that, they'd be missing out on over $1 million in aid.
It's time to remove these people from our country.
In a statement, the Dane County Sheriff responds, quote, "This bill undermines local authority and could have serious consequences for effective law enforcement. It is not the state legislature's role to dictate how law enforcement does its job." Today in Marinette, Governor Evers also spoke out against the bill.
Well, the idea that we're going to punish sheriffs if they don't comply, that's just wrong-headed.
In a statement, Governor Evers' communications director writes, quote, "This is not a serious proposal."
Definitely going to veto this, then, is what you're saying.
Amen.
In Madison, Vanessa Kelson.
And within the first 2 weeks of President Donald Trump's second term, nearly 9,000 people who entered the country illegally have been arrested. That's according to the Department of Homeland Security. More than 5,500 have been deported.